Welcome back to Recruiter Fuel. My name is David Budiszewski. I'm here with Mrs. McLean about attracting the right talent. Right? That seems. I mean, when you look at issues that recruiters are having nowadays, there's so many applicants going for a job, but it's not exactly the right one. So really, you want to be proactive in that and attract the right talent instead of having to sift through stuff. So what is like deciding what the right talent is, right? And how do you decide that in your organization, what you're looking for specifically?
That's a good question. It's kind of twofold, I feel like. For us, when we're talking to a client on an intake call, you have a job description normally that you're working off of. So that lists a lot of the skills, the things that you need or ideally would like somebody to have in the position. And when we're doing an intake, it's important for us to get all of that information that's not listed on the job description, the soft skills, that why the role's open, the goals, the challenges that somebody might undertake when they take the position,
Sure.
the team dynamic, the company culture, those things that aren't necessarily glaring and usually don't come out until interviews. It's
Oh
important.
yeah, which is the wrong place for them to come out in.
Yeah.
Like you want to know going
Yeah.
into that. Yeah.
So it's important for us to get all of that information from the client before we start searching for talent and before we start our research process. We really have to understand the profile of like, what is somebody functionally looking for? And then when you start looking for candidates, you can see what you can see in black and white. There's only so much that you're able to tell from online presence, or knowing of a company, and maybe you kind of know of the role previously of where that person might be coming from. So you really have to be careful as a recruiter not to just dismiss people because of what you see on their LinkedIn, because maybe they haven't updated it
Oh
recently,
yeah,
or
I haven't
you
touched
know
mine in forever. So
yeah, so you just want to keep an open mind and have those conversations, because that's where you're going to get all of the information that you had on the intake with the hiring manager to really understand, like, what is that person looking for? What have they done before? How did they do something and what was the result of it?
yeah. So I think in our process, what we do at
Mhm.
Qualigents, we have a form that we do, right? We
Yep.
go down and what is it called?
We just have it's a client intake form,
Mhm.
where, we use results-based interviewing here with our candidates, but we do that with our clients as well.
Sure,
Of
yeah.
You're asking, how do you want somebody to come in and do something? What is the result you want to see from them? And then when you're talking to the candidate, it's the reverse of like, what have you done before? How did you get there? What was your end results, good or bad?
Yeah.
And how did you overcome those things if it wasn't as what you thought it was going to be?
A big problem that a lot of recruiters are having is where exactly to be looking for this talent, right? Because
Sure.
it's spread out everywhere,
Yeah.
on almost to the point where you're looking on forums for people because that's where they're doing like their like if for like programmers, correct?
Mhm.
Like they're not going on LinkedIn and
Right.
talking about they're on like they're going in code bases and like putting comments there and so you have to kind of go where they are.
Yeah.
Where's the best place for people to be looking for candidates? Is it going to depend on what you're looking for, or?
Yeah, it depends on the role because there are so many different options online that you can use. So there's, things like Indeed or Career Builder, Monster, obviously LinkedIn, but there are, certain websites that you can go to. You can join LinkedIn groups. I mean, it just really depends on like what actually are you looking for. And what type of recruiter are you, right? Are you at an agency where you can go out in the field and do like job fairs, or are you
Mm,
strictly like in the office and you're having to make phone calls, and can only do online things? So it just kind of depends like what type of recruiter your job is really,
yeah.
to kind of give you the leverage that you need.
When you're thinking about going after the right talents,
Mhm.
right? What should you be considering in your search? Is that going to be tied to what you're to who you're hiring and what you're hiring for, or is there sort of a baseline you should kind of have when you're looking for the right talent?
It's difficult because the right talent sometimes can be hidden, right? Because again, we can only see what we can see. So it's all about the conversations and the interviews that you have with those candidates to uncover. And it's your job to really dig and uncover and not just ask surface level questions, but understand not only their skill set, but what are their motivators? Like, what is getting that person to go into work every day, right? Because what if the company culture does not align with what this person's looking
Yeah.
for? You have to be really honest and say, okay, I don't think this is a match. Because you want to make sure, not just for the hiring manager, but also the candidate, both parties need to be lockstep with this is a right fit for me.
Yeah, I think honesty is kind of one of those things that goes both ways. And
Yeah.
I think both sides of the equation sort of have a problem with that sometimes, where it's
Yeah.
like you think that you're attracting the right talent by sort of hiding certain things about your
Sure.
culture, but really what you're doing is you're just setting yourself up for failure, you know, 3, 4,
Yeah.
5, 6 months down the line, and now you're in the same position you were before, but now you've gone through the onboarding process and all this
Yep.
stuff. And
Yeah.
so like being honest in that initial part of that is going to
Yes.
get you the right person.
Yeah, and that's why it's important to ask just not what are the opportunities that somebody could get for being in this role and like, growth opportunities with the company, but again, what are some of the challenges that somebody might face, right? Depending on how the position's been open or how long or what projects are coming up in 2025, you really have to understand that from the client. And it's just for our benefit as well as the clients because you're able to explain to the candidate, to your point, like here's what to expect when you're going to start or come into this role.
Yeah.
Because then you have to look for a person who has the ability and who has in the past overcome challenges, right? And how did they overcome
Yeah.
them? So you're trying to kind of see that as well of like, what are some of the answers that they're giving me here? And would they be a fit for this role? Or do they need everything kind of laid out in front of them with no challenges and all set up and they can just kind of walk in? That's probably not the role for somebody.
It's interesting that you said how they overcoming challenges and how they overcome them.
Yes.
Because the how could be a big part
Yes.
of how they fit into your company,
Yes.
right?
Sometimes that's more important to a hiring manager
Yeah.
than anything of like, I don't care if they fail, but how did they pick themselves up and move on from it and then find success later, So that's why it's important to get all of those things in the intake initially when we are talking to clients to fully understand the entirety of the role.
One thing that sort of crept up in my head when I was thinking about this is the idea of putting your best foot forward as a company,
Mhm.
because there is so much information out there.
Yeah.
We talk about individuals, sure, but also companies.
Mhm.
Things like Glassdoor
Sure.
and your social media page that you run for your company. All that's there.
Sure.
The people who run it, all it's. What is a good plan to sort of put your best foot forward to sort of attract the talent that you're looking for, right?
Yeah, I think again, being transparent when somebody's interviewing and they're asking you questions about, I saw this online or I saw this bad article or something like that. I think it's the more honest you are with somebody to say, hey, listen, here's what happened. You can't obviously maybe divulge everything, but you can give enough to say, we've changed this if you need to. You know what I mean? So you're
Yeah.
giving an explanation versus just hiding it and pretending it didn't happen or wasn't out there. Again, I think honesty is always the best policy. And so it rings true, especially when you see those things, because listen, everyone's going to have their opinion, right? And they can
Sure.
write on those websites, or a bad article could get written, right? Something happens and it's all over the news and
Yeah.
and somebody's asking about it, and that's fully okay. I think it's just important to explain to that person how the company is overcoming whatever that could be and maybe the changes that they've made because of something. I think it's just important to explain that and be honest and open about it.
I think there's something to be said there about as much as you're interviewing candidates, candidates are interviewing you as
100%.
well.
Yeah.
And it's something to be mindful of when you're
Yes.
trying to get that right talent is also, putting your best foot forward and realizing what the candidate needs and being honest with them in that
Yeah,
moment.
it's a two-way street. It's not just the hiring manager needs the candidate to fit. The candidate needs the hiring manager and the rest of the company to fit, right? So if those don't align, it's not the right fit and you shouldn't force those kind of things.
Are there any other sort of ideas floating around that you thought of attracting the right talent something that you've sort of come across, or?
Um, I think I would say, obviously depending on the role, but I think just getting creative, with the job postings that you're doing, whether that be the language you're using or the
Oh, yeah.
graphics or
Don't copy paste from
yeah,
AI and then put
yeah,
it on there. Like,
yeah.
we know.
Yeah, so just get creative because you got to think there's other jobs that could be similar or whatever. So how do you stand out, right? And I think the best way is personalization. So, if you're able to, and the hiring manager is able to post something, or, to make it more than just in a feed, if you can.
Yeah.
And if you can't, then just again, make sure that when you're posting the job descriptions, you've gone over them with the hiring manager and and you're kind of putting some things in there that aren't it's not so formal, right? You have to have certain things in it, but mention some things about the company and about the things, accolades that the company is getting and things that would make it attractive for somebody to want to check it out.
I mean, we've all got things that we're proud of. You might well show them out there.
Yeah, exactly.
So, yeah, thanks for sitting down with me today.
Yeah,
This was
thanks for
very fun.
having me. It's
Yeah.
good to be back.
Good to be back.
Good to be back.